My father was a pedophile, and there was a relationship there. I was also in relationship with one of my brothers over the years. I see this as an altar for both of us. So my father brought me in, so to speak, but he was also associated with Navy years past. And I know that at 3 years old, I was then being traumatized and dissociated by members of that organization, that branch of the military. In subsequent years, there were a variety of branches of military involved, me being taken to bases and so forth. And yeah, I think it grew over the years into being offered up, I believe, through intelligence agencies to the Mormon LDS hierarchy. This is not much talked about, so be forewarned. But at the hierarchy levels, they were utilizing certain altars and programs. So for me, it wound up becoming military intelligence agencies, individuals associated or having links to them, corporations of that variety, and then some religious organizations as well. I came into this through my own memories, actually, and they didn't make sense. Of course, it was massively confusing, having lived what looked like a particular life course, and then having been flooded off and on with these horrific memories that didn't seem to fit into the narrative of my life. It was deeply troubling. I attempted therapy many years ago. I had some self-mutilation, suicide attempts in my early 20s as a result of how I was being utilized. The therapist had no knowledge of this, so we did engage in therapy, which one individual was an extremely compassionate man, extremely. I still see his face. And though he didn't understand what I was going through, it gave me a lot of hope that there were people out there that were genuinely human beings and concerned. So I believe a lot of reprogramming took place during that time. It wouldn't be until I went to all kinds of things. I went to MUFON meetings. I went to conferences regarding conspiracy and UFOs and all kinds of things, trying to covertly find help. But it wouldn't be until 2007, 2008 that I started going with more awareness, that I had voices telling me in my head, don't go there, you're outing us, that kind of thing. But I went anyway because I felt as though I was going to die any moment, which went on for years. And I wound up going to an International UFO Congress conference. I worked it so that I could afford to be there. I was there for 11 days. And at the end of it, a man approached me, which turned out to be a potential handler who was also MK Ultra. But he had information that I needed. So I took a chance and I wound up in Salt Lake City with two ex-Mormon LDS who were speaking out. One was very vocal, and it was a very unusual circumstance that I was programmed to him. I won't go into that, but my programming was breaking down enough. He was a very centered spiritual person, so the program did not play out. And what happened instead was he had called another man, and we sat down for several days, and I just told them everything. And at the end of it, they weren't deprogrammers or therapists, but at the end of it, they told me, we not only believe you, we've worked with people like you. And at that point, the floodgates opened. It still almost chokes me up because it was as if my altars said, we're finally safe, somebody's listening. And they began presenting memories 24/7, literally flooding me with memories. It was a very challenging time, but it opened. Sure. Sexual abuse is number one priority, starting from very young. I do have a memory as an infant that I relived a body memory in deep, deep programming where my airway was blocked. I was pre-verbal at that time. And I mean, you know, the movement was arms and legs like a very small infant. And I dissociated over it being blocked twice. I dissociated. So the dissociation starts very young. If you were part of what we refer to now as MK Ultra programs, and there's a variety of programs, the name has changed, but it's the same MO basically. So it was trauma-based mind control, which involves a variety of sexual abuse, rape, sodomy. Um, uh, I had cattle prods used on me, electric shock in other forms, um, uh, drugs, hypnosis. I was obviously linked up to machinery and in some of the bases, and drowning, near drowning, and drowning. A lot to do with water for me. And I believe there were also alternative objectives with putting me in water, not only to traumatize me, but some other objectives that they had. So yeah, the goal, from what I can tell from my memories, the goal for me was a lot of heavy sexual use on task, as well as killing on task. Those were the main uses, but there's always with an MK Ultra that they put that much time and energy into. And when you have high level individuals that have access to you in what I call the network, you're going to have a lot of uses. I was used individually, and I was also used in teams. So there were team objectives as well. So there's never really just one use. There may be predominant uses and predominant programming, but there's always these alternative accessibilities with the various alters and their skills. There's quite a wide variety. Locations, many locations I list in my book. I do list not only countries and states, cities that I have memory of. A lot of the places for me, even today, my memories don't play out like a movie where you have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's come a lot of it's come together, covering decades, but there's always missing pieces. So you know, I have a memory in a facility. I have a sense that I'm in the desert outside of Tucson, but I couldn't tell you where the facility is. And then years later, I'll have confirmation from someone who knows that facility, I mean, an insider that knows about that facility. So a lot of it is that it's like I have a memory here, I have a memory over here, and I'm determining where those places are to the best of my ability. Some of them I know specifically, as for example, McDill Air Force Base in Tampa years ago, which was the SOCOM base, by the way, in those years, and may still be, as far as I know. Some of the facilities are underground. That was very clear. As far as people, a lot of the people in my memories aren't famous people. In other words, for example, kill programming. What I learned as a pattern for me in my particular case was I was being utilized by the network to take out a lot of members of the network. So I can still see faces and outfits and so forth, but I don't know who they are. I have no names. I do have memories of programming to some activists, like many years ago, Danny Glover, who I knew nothing about him. And then I learned in deprogramming that he was quite the activist in regards to Venezuela and Hugo Chavez, and that was a real problem, for example, for the Bush administration, Papa Bush, by the way. So there were things like that intimated I had a relationship to some higher level people that I was being utilized to assist in their agenda. Well, at 3 years old, I was clearly in a cage, in a stack of cages. while something was being performed, a horrific murder was being performed in front of me by a group of men dressed in what I call navy denims. That was one thing I recognized, which was something I know my father had many years ago. He wasn't there in that, but so there were cages involved. I recall being electric shocked on a cold metal table, and this was at McDill Air Force Base, while there were men in khaki uniforms in the room. One had a white coat on, and I only remember snippets because I kept blacking out from what they were doing. And I do remember him saying, I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, 3 more rounds at one point. There was water involved. I was as a youth, I was actually as a youth and adult years, I was in larger pools, but as a youth, I was in what I would describe as a rather small tank, submerged, with 2 men standing over me and hearing in my head, not hearing them verbally, but hearing in my head, stop holding your breath. That's what it was. Stop holding your breath. I was trying not to inhale the water, and they wanted me to inhale the water. And then as far as other ritualistic, bizarre episodes, being drugged and being raped by groups of men, being in and out of my consciousness, really, really perverted actions, involving blood, and semen, various things. Yeah, it would be the infant would be the first experience. I know my mouth was stretched as wide as it would go, and I was screaming, crying, and then there's no sound, but my mouth is still stretched as wide as it goes. So I've used my imagination to extrapolate onto that, what was taking place. And then I'd have to say the 3-year-old episode with me coming to an altar in a cage, and then having these Navy guys come in, and there was a man, before me, basically being horrifically tortured to death. And I was to witness this. So I would say those are the earliest. And then there's snippets of things with my father as a young person that I won't give details on. They're too really disgusting, but it involves semen, urine, and feces. So a lot of the really horrific stuff being done to me, or me witnessing, which I've also witnessed other young individuals being taken out, or being programmed, and being unable to help, which seems to be one of the things they like to do with groups of kids. Wow, yeah, I could go on for a while on that one. I guess what I would say is that this has been around a very, very long time. This isn't new to this modern age. It's been around for eons in various human civilizations, offering up to the gods and so forth. And this is really, in a bizarre way, this is what we're looking at, is a group of men, women all over the world who have become subjects of dark forces, and are paying homage and worshiping these forces because they've been promised things. By the way, guys, that are a lie. Okay, nobody gets out of this. And even the minions that are being used, the men and women in corporate, military, intelligence, politics, government, law enforcement, you name it, I don't think they realize what I know, and that is you're expendable as well, and will be gotten rid of at the right time. But they've been promised things, and they're actually under a spell themselves, under a version of mind control as well. And a lot of these are coming from families, long bloodlines that have been involved with Luciferic satanic worship for a very long time, hundreds, if not thousands of years. So this is very real. It has morphed into a more modern version where what was done to me as a trauma-based survivor doesn't necessarily have to happen the same way anymore, as the technologies have grown and they are now remotely tapping people, which needs to make people wake up to the fact that this is a global issue now, and they can choose someone anywhere, anytime. It's not the same as trauma-based mind control in my era in 1962, but that still exists as well. So we've got trauma-based mind control still continuing, and we've got targeting on a whole new level technologically and spiritually.